Hello and welcome back to the VolReport Show. I'm Ryan Sylvia of VolReport.com on the Rivals Network. And with Tennessee football having a bye week this week, I thought there would be no better time to catch up on the recruiting trail with our guy, Dale Dowden, who does a phenomenal job with us over at VolReport. He knows everything there is to know about the recruiting scene here in Knoxville. So I want to hear some of his thoughts. We're going to start with the 2024 class, start with the 2023 class, the kids that are freshmen right now, move over to the 2024 class that's kind of finalizing what that's looking like, and then talk about the future of recruiting here at Tennessee. So Dale, the first thing I want to ask you is about the linebacker position. With the injury of Keenan Peely, we've seen kind of some reserve guys start to get pushed up and have to play more snaps. Two of those guys being true freshmen, Arian Carter and Jeremiah Thielander. I want to hear your thoughts on what they've looked like as freshmen and kind of what your thoughts were when they were heading into their freshman year out of high school.
Arian Carter more the grinder completes, and in his snaps you've seen a very physical guy. He will come up and hit you. In a lot of the same thing with Arian Carter, you've seen a lot of stuff from him, chasing down stuff in the flats. We saw that a couple of times. And he flies from his middle linebacker position all the way to the flats and makes the play essentially little to no gain, fourth and fourth down. Both of them, like you said, getting their reps, due to injuries and guys moving around, and they've made the most of it.
Yeah, let's talk about some other guys outside that linebacker position, or maybe it is another linebacker, but is there anyone else on this team right now that was in that 2024 class, whether they've played a lot or whether they haven't, that you've seen flashes so far early in this season that you think that even if it's not this year, maybe in the future years, they could be a really pivotal piece for Tennessee?
Okay, so yeah, Cam Seldon is another kid. We've talked about him before, especially coming out of the spring game. People got a little glimpse of what he has to offer. As you mentioned with the linebackers, I think Cam Seldon is a guy that even if you don't see him at the running back position, with his skill set, with him moving different guys at the receiver position, you could potentially see Cam Seldon in a slot role, trying to use various. I think that's something for people to look for and definitely stay alert of his name.
So let's move to the 2024 class. At this point, that class is starting to take the form of what it's going to look like by the time these kids kind of put pen to paper and sign with Tennessee. So talking about these commits, you've been to a lot of these high school games. You've caught up with a lot of these kids. Has there been anyone that has flown under the radar that you maybe don't understand why, or that surprised you from when maybe you were doing your evaluations before this season that you've now seen them this year and have kind of gone, wow, I mean, that kid is definitely got a chance to be really good in college that not a lot of people are talking about?
That, and then some of the guys that, are some of the upper end guys that people kind of expected, something out of, have just made huge strides. To answer your first question, though, Jordan Burns, I know he's rated a 4-star linebacker. I had a chance to go see him a couple of weeks ago. They played host to Woodward, or I believe Woodland may have been. Physical. I just, it makes sense. We're talking about Arian Carter and Jeremiah Thielander, and he definitely appears to be that next guy that, coming in, with guys like Edwin Spillman, that type of linebacker mode that they've seemed to have been recruiting is going to continue. And, just to touch on the second part of what I was saying is a guy like Edwin Spillman, a guy everybody, knows he was a coveted guy, expected a lot out of, again, saw him one of the first games of the season, and just looking at him physically, he just looks the part, and then the game, begins, and he's flying around lighting people up. Those are two guys, like I said, one that was kind of, not so much of underrated, but just a lot of people not really talking enough about. He's Jordan Burns, very, very physical. Loves physicality. Doesn't matter if it's offense playing fullback or defense playing linebacker.
So I want to kind of flip that. This could be 5-star Mike Matthews. This could be some of the 4-star guys like Boo Carter that we keep hearing about. But who is someone that you just cannot wait to see in Knoxville and see what they can do?
I think you probably answered it with those two names you mentioned. Start with Mike. Matthews is a very versatile kid. Somebody who can line up in the slot or out wide. Very good speed. Also plays basketball, so has a pretty good vertical. It's somebody who could, take the top off the defense, if he gets the opportunity, or somebody, coming through something across the middle. If he catches the ball and no one gets a hand on him, you're probably not going to catch. And then Boo Carter as well.
You've talked with a lot of these recruits after the high school games and whatnot, and you've been able to connect with them. What's been the biggest thing that stood out that's kind of been an overarching theme when you talk to these kids that they say about Tennessee and what appeals to them?
Just the family culture, and then of course when they're on visits, the atmosphere. I actually have a quote I'm gonna read off to you. This is a story I'll be working on today, but this was from a 2024 commit. Not gonna give his name away just yet, but he made a reference to being in Neyland, and this is his quote. It says, "Seeing and hearing the fans was an experience I have not had before, and it gave me chills every time they sung Rocky Top." And, just a lot of these guys, even if they've been there before, different games just have different feels to them when it comes to the atmosphere. And it doesn't matter how many times you're in Neyland, every time can essentially be different. And when you have your commits, saying things in that regard to the atmosphere, it's always a good thing, because during the pregame stuff and even during the game when they're in the visitor box with some of these guys that are uncommitted, some of these guys that are committed elsewhere, some of these guys are underclassmen, so as they're, kind of getting their raw, feel of what's going on, their initial raw reaction is going to these guys that are hearing that. And it's just starts a recruiting tactic in itself, even without even, that might not even be the case, but just by how they would rant and rave, some of these younger guys, it might be their first time there, and just hearing that, almost makes like a mental exaggeration of what's taking place to put Tennessee in a good spot with guys going down the road.
Another kind of recruiting tactic that's been used is peer recruiting, and that's played a big role in a lot of this 2024 class. Can you talk about the effect that you've seen of peer recruiting, guys like Boo Carter, who we mentioned a little bit earlier, and kind of what their role plays in building together these classes?
Just you have select guys in every class, that even if an average call to other prospects, and it draws them into him. A lot of these guys that committed into class, before Boo, they often mention Boo, not necessarily doing like a part of like their ultimate decision, but it had an impact, because those guys that was going to be priority for him, guys, Mike Matthews, Edwin Spilt, guys of that, and here they are, they're in the boat. And that's the big thing, this last Saturday, he used both were tasked with the job of being with Jordan Seaton, number one offensive lineman, for Rivals. And you couldn't ask for two better guys to be his host. That's two guys that I really think they take pride in the peer recruiting, because, they want other elite guys to come with them. They know it can't just be, a select few guys in this class. You have to start getting that from top to bottom. And they know that there's certain pieces they need to make this keep going and to get to where they want to go. And they're on the job and they're taking it seriously.
Looking at the 2024 class, Tennessee comes in at number 10 throughout the country, but there's a handful of SEC teams in front of them. Georgia at number 2, Florida at number 3, A&M at number 4, soon to be an SEC foe at number 6, Alabama at number 8, and then Tennessee at number 10. So 10's a good spot to be at, but with these SEC teams kind of a step ahead in terms of this 2024 class, do you think it's where it needs to be for Tennessee to really take that next step under Josh Heupel?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not going to all happen in one class, which is one thing that, a lot of people have to put in perspective. You're looking at a program like Georgia, who is eerily looking like some of the years we've seen from Alabama in the past. And when you look at their recruiting classes, it's easily top 3 classes stacked on top of each other year after year after year after year. And the big thing about those teams is there's not really a whole lot that goes into the transfer portal leaving. So they maintain the majority of that talent. You know, Tennessee's had some good classes, and obviously you can see the effect on the field, but depth is a thing when you get deep in the SEC play and start talking about postseason play. And right now, that's just where programs like Bama, Georgia, and other programs sometimes seem to be able to kind of pull away from Tennessee slightly. You just have to start, chip away at it year after year. 10, is a good spot to be in. I do think they could potentially finish higher than that, which is even better. But yeah, I mean, the big thing about Georgia, is until they lose, 2 or 3 games a year, they're going to be able to maintain pulling those top 3 classes because they can go around and use those flashy rings and everything to help recruit, and that's a big deal. That's again why we saw Alabama be so dominant, over a sustained period of time, was for a lot of those same reasons. So a program like Georgia just got to chip at it year after year, beat them a couple of times, during a few seasons, really kind of start shifting, that momentum. But right now, I think they're okay.
Let's talk about kind of keeping in-state talent at home at the flagship university at Tennessee. 2024 class, they hit on the number 1 guy in the state, Boo Carter. They also got number 5 in Edwin Spillman, number 8, Caleb Beasley, number 11, Marcus Corey Jr., and a few more guys like Carson Gentle at 17. Go to the 2025 class, George McIntyre, still a guy who's undecided. We'll see where he decides to go. Can really go anywhere he wants to right now, a pro-style quarterback. They missed out on Deuce Knight at number 2, Notre Dame commit. But then you go down the list and you see a lot of names that are undecided, but you've seen connected to Tennessee. You've seen them take visits. You've seen them be in the conversation for being guys that could land with the Vols. Mm-hmm. How would you say Josh Heupel's done at getting these in-state kids to stay at home? And do you think he needs to do a little bit of work in the 2025 class, or is it where it needs to be?
Right now, it's where it needs to be. A lot of those guys, like you said, that they are undecided, but the majority of those guys are also talking about taking their recruitment possibly into next summer, if not, mid-fall of next year. They just got to stay in connection, keep getting the guys on campus, keep doing what they typically are doing. And I think it's going to go a long way. I mean, you talked about George McIntyre, who I think, at this point, with Deuce Knight committing to Notre Dame, probably has to be one of their biggest in-state targets that they really have to swing for. He and Cameron Sparks at Baylor. I think that's probably your 2 top guys that you're going to see Tennessee really go after. And then, as you said, just keeping the contact, the conversation, keep themselves in play, and then when it gets crunch time, they know how to close in and do what they need to do.
You just mentioned George McIntyre and Cam Sparks, the number 1 and number 4 respective players in the 2025 class out of Tennessee. You keep going down the list, though, and it's just a lot of guys you've seen talk very highly about Tennessee. Jalen Morgan, CJ Jim Coley. I mean, you can just scroll down this list, and it's a lot of guys that you've seen say very positive things about the Vols that are very likely high on that recruiting list. Let's talk about that 2025 class, maybe even pushing to 2026. I know it gets a little hairy when you kind of go that far back into the high school rankings, but who stands out to you? Who's a guy in those class that you think Tennessee's got to hit on that has jumped out to you? Maybe it's you're at a game looking at a guy in the 2024 class maybe, but hey, one of those teammates or guys on the other team in the 2025 or 2026 class could really be a factor in these upcoming cycles.
2025, definitely there's a few guys that I could say that, and it's not that they're not really looking at him already. It's just, again, it's kind of a slow play type deal. But, obviously we got the 4-star out of Milton, the Shamar Arnu kid that's committed. 2 teammates of his actually are also in the secondary. one who's expected to release, I think, a top 5 tomorrow in Dylan Lewis, and then there's another defensive back that's there in Tyler Redmond. Both guys were in Knoxville over the last weekend for the South Carolina game. Both those guys are very, very talented. Tyler Redmond, you could probably play about 3 or 4 different positions with his body size. A very long kid, thick. They won't say about 6'2", probably about 200 pounds. So, very versatile body that you can move around, maybe as an outside backer if you need them to, safety, whatever. Dylan Lewis, more of your standard corner back build, very skilled, doesn't give up a whole lot. I've had the opportunity to see him play a couple of times over the years. I actually need to go check him out soon and see how those guys have developed. But both those guys are, 2 guys definitely Tennessee could look forward to add to the secondary. A tight end out of Calhoun in Amari Winston, 4-star tight end, another very versatile guy. I know I went and seen him last year, and they kind of used him almost the way that Tennessee utilized Winston Fant last year. You could see him lined up at fullback, tight end, flanked out as receiver. There's oftentimes they put him in at quarterback, and it's a wildcat package. And very successful in where they put him. So that's another guy. He also is a guy that has a relationship with another 25 that is a priority in Cameron Sparks. So that could be something interesting to kind of sit there and watch too. Another 25 is a guy that actually transferred from Brainerd up into Kentucky. I'm not 100% sure on the pronunciation of this school, but it looks like it may be Paducah Tillman in Kentucky.
Okay.
Is Martell's Carter. By the way, today's his birthday, so if you see this, Martell's happy birthday. Very explosive kid. It's kind of ironic. The number he wears is C4, so he actually has the nickname of C4, and it makes sense. Very explosive on the defensive side and offensive side. A guy probably taller, a little bit more of a different build, but I could say may remind a lot of people of D. Williams, how athletic he is with the ball in his hand, and just explosive and energetic. That's typically him. There's another guy, he alongside of, Boo Carter 7-on-7, trains with them, so kind of out that same cloth as much as I brag on Boo about being a human highlight reel.
Yeah, so thank you, Dale, for hopping on. It was good catching up with you. Hope that the listeners kind of got some names to look out for out of this. Dale, what is your future plan? Where are you going to be? Who are you going to be in attendance for? And where can people follow your work?
Well, also, you can follow all of us at VolReport Rivals on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. My personal page on Twitter is at Dale_Dowden. And then on Instagram, I'm wanting to say you can look me up at it's at DWDD1627. And then, as far as where I'm headed next, I'm actually tonight. I just found that Bradley Central has a game tonight. So maybe going out to see Boo and Marcus Gorey again tonight. And then next Friday, I'm actually planning to travel into Kentucky to go out and see Martell's and catch up with him.
That's awesome. Great plan. Everyone make sure that you stay informed over at VolReport.com. We've got great content on the recruiting trail from all of our recruiting writers, but especially Dale has been absolutely killing it. So make sure you head over there, grab yourself a subscription, talk about it in the forum as well. That'll do it all for us today, though. We fought through some connection issues, but we made it, and we hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you check out everything in the description, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and thank you for watching.